Trees can be surprisingly challenging to draw if you don't want them all to look like green blobs. But in a sketchbook, a lot of times we just don't have a lot of space. So, the question is, how do you make them look somewhat realistic, even when they're only an inch or two tall? So I wrote a book about trees called The Tree Collectors, and this is a book that I wrote and illustrated, which means that I had to draw a ton of trees of all sizes and all shapes in order to illustrate this book. So this is one of a few different tutorials I made on how to draw and paint trees in a sketchbook based on the ideas I used to illustrate my own book. This is a greatly sped up version of this tutorial. I email these out to subscribers every Friday, and they get the full version with a lot more explanation and techniques and supply lists. And of course, we do it in real time, not just sped up like this. But this one is like tiny little watercolor trees, but then I also showed some examples of how you could add colored pencil or marker if you really like to work in mixed media. But the idea is for these to be, quick and easy, but also to look somewhat realistic. So they're not just cartoony little, popsicles. And I walk through a bunch of different approaches to this. So these tutorials I make are, not just one way of doing something, but a whole bunch of different approaches, usually using watercolor, but also ink or colored pencil or other mixed media. So that whatever you like to work with, you'll find an example that is appropriate here. We also look at how to mix really different colors of greens and blues and yellows and oranges and all the different colors that trees come in, so that, again, they're not all looking exactly the same. But this is a wet into wet technique that I'm using, where I'm going to sort of put in a layer, but then I'm going to let that layer dry before I come in and do the second layer that gives it a little bit more depth and just makes the trees seem more round, right? So they're not like a little cardboard cut out of a tree, but they actually feel like they have depth and they have shadows in them. And it's really the shadows, it's the dark and light, having those really contrasts between the light hitting the tree and the deepest, darkest shadows that make them come alive and make them really seem real. So I dry these off really quick. It's always fine to use a hair dryer if you just want to keep going with stuff. And then I come in once it's dry to add a bit more detail and a bit more depth. So even though these trees are only an inch or two tall, they're pretty realistic for just a little tree in a sketchbook. Maybe it's a larger scene, a street scene, a park, a forest, whatever you're drawing. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can subscribe. I'll put the link below, and this is something that comes to your inbox every week, but there's also a whole archive, so you get everything in the archive as well. So I'll put the link below, but you could also like and subscribe to this video and this channel if you'd like to see more of these right here on YouTube. Okay, thanks for watching.